much power can one small group of people possess? Could they be behind all the world's modern revolutions? Could they run governments? Do they control celebrities, media behind the scenes? Is it possible that within a few hundred years, one small group who conspired to take over the world actually succeeded? Of all the secret societies throughout history, none are more notorious than the Bavarian Illuminati. The world before the Illuminati was not too different from the world that followed their arrival. There were still conspiracies to capture political power. Existing secret societies, such as the Templars, set up strategic banking strategies to control and sequester the wealth of Europe. Artists still invoked mysticism in their work. As far back as the Middle Ages, rational minds harbored occult interests, including Sir Isaac Newton. Some even say this paradigm places the true origins of the Illuminati back in ancient Babylon, where cults practiced Kabbalistic divination to try to learn the secrets of the universe. According to the contemporary history of the Illuminati, what changed the most is how their legacy has evolved over time. They've become the most talked about and feared group in conspiracy theories in each of the following centuries. Our story starts in Bavaria, an oppressive place like much of Europe in the late 18th century. This was soon going to be shaken up, and so was the world, during this historic period of revolution. On the night of May 1st, 1776, in a clandestine forest, 5 men met in secret to begin formation of a sacred order. The torches they carried that night would be symbolic of the one thing they set out to bring the world: illumination. To understand the true significance of this evening, we have to look at the man whose ideas led to that fated meeting. Adam Weishaupt was one of the foremost intellectuals of his time. An eager student of philosophy, Adam became interested in the concept of empiricism, which was introduced to him by peers at the time. He became a big proponent of rationality and materialist science. Adam was inspired and truly believed it was these very ideas which could liberate humanity from the long-standing tyranny of religion and even the rule of kings. Adam knew to accomplish this vision he would need a small army. He started by entering the Freemasons 1777, trying to co-opt the establishment in a straightforward alliance, but soon found his ideas were at odds with that of the Masonic leadership. This caused his strategy to change entirely. He decided to begin recruiting from their ranks to build a vast network of spies for the Illuminati, a secret society within a secret society. This is a tactic which future groups would copy to gain power. Using extreme precision, he handpicked figures with power and resources such as finance giant Meyer Amschel Rothschild and Prince Karl of Hesse. With these strong new assets, the Illuminati soon grew, from 5 men to thousands. Among these men were some of the most brilliant philosophical, literary, and political minds in all of Europe, probably the world. The newly imported Masons shaped much of the culture and initiatory system. Within their 13-level arrangement, which was attributed to Baron von Nigg, aspirants were instructed to select the name of a great figure from the ancient world to take as their new moniker. Nigg himself was called Philo, after the great Jewish philosopher from Alexandria. Weishaupt himself chose Spartacus, after the gladiator and revolutionary leader who gained fame during the Third Civil War in Rome. Weishaupt saw himself as an abolitionist in his own time. Though the organization seemed dangerous and potentially nefarious, Weishaupt's intentions were utopian and naive. He believed that by re-educating initiates in the science of reason, the order could gain political influence in order to effect radical social change at an institutional level. His goal was to avert the human tendencies for regression and the will to power. Unlike the blood-hungry revolutionaries of France, Weishaupt sought an egalitarian solution, built through the infrastructure of his expanding social network. Unfortunately, it didn't matter. In a world where revolutions were erupting everywhere, these ideas soon came under harsh persecution by the paranoid Bavarian state. What appeared to be damning leaked documents were used to paint the order as subversive and depicted the goal of aiding outside parties in a hostile takeover of Bavaria. This and the constant infighting of the order led to its banning by Prince-Elector and Duke of Bavaria Charles Theodore in 1785. Weishaupt was fired in humiliating fashion from Ingolstadt University. He was forced into exile, and the order itself officially disbanded. According to most reports, they all split up and vanished from Europe completely, without a trace. After the dust settled, one pressing question remained. Was the order really gone forever? Or did they simply go underground to regroup in the shadows and become more powerful than before? Part 2. Mythology. The official records of the Illuminati's existence after Bavaria are sparse and mostly speculatory. However, there may be compelling evidence to suggest the order's influence lived well into the next century and beyond in more ways than one. Whether by homage or a hidden hand, whispers of the order began to surface on the shores of America. A small church in Charleston, New England, was one of the first places we begin to hear of the Illuminati on the American continent. A charismatic reverend named Jedediah Morse led a small congregation in the late 1790s. With conservative values under political attack and church attendance dwindling during the period, clergymen were desperate to maintain their place in society and keep the status quo of the established American Republic. It was under these pressing circumstances that Morse, the leader of the New Israel in America movement, declared his fears of the growing influence of the French in American politics during his Fast Day sermons in 1799. In this fear-mongering tirade, Morse went as far as listing suspected members of the Bavarian Illuminati who were living in Virginia and New York. And he had the documents to prove it. He states, "I have now in my possession complete and indubitable proof that such societies do exist and have for many years existed in the United States. I have, my brethren, an official authenticated list of the names, ages, places of nativity, professions of the officers and members of a society of Illuminati, or as they are now more generally and properly styled, Illuminis, consisting of 100 members instituted in Virginia by the Grand Orient of France." Historians have generally dismissed this scapegoating as a political device to attack enemies of the conservative clergy before the upcoming elections. However, the Illuminati threat gained so much interest that it was even published in several regional newspapers at the time. Morse wasn't the only one worried about the potential Illuminati in America. In a letter to Reverend G.W. Snyder, written on September 25, 1789, America's first president, George Washington, says the following: "I've heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plan and doctrines of the Illuminati, but never saw the book until you were pleased to send it to me." He goes on to say that he hasn't been in a Masonic lodge in almost 30 years and states that, "I believe notwithstanding that none of the lodges in this country are contaminated with the principles ascribed to the Society of the Illuminati." Was he telling the truth or covering a dark secret? Who else in the political elite knew about the Illuminati? Founding Father Thomas Jefferson, who wrote sympathetically about Adam Weishaupt in 1800, saying, "Weishaupt believes that to promote this perfection of the human character was the object of Jesus Christ, that his intention was simply to reinstate natural religion, and by diffusing the light of his morality, to teach us to govern ourselves." In 1807, his political opponent and future president, John Quincy Adams, accused Jefferson of using Masonic lodges for subversive Illuminati purposes. In a letter to fellow Mason Colonel William C. Stone, he went as far as to say Alexander Hamilton was involved and that they were worshiping Lucifer. The book, Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe, written by John Robinson, which was the very same text referenced by Jedediah Morse, gained popularity among the European aristocracy around the year 1848. The book, which states that the Bavarian Illuminati survived its disbanding in 1785, was again the scapegoat, this time for the rise of the radical liberal middle class, who staged a massive workers' revolt. They called for the end of monarchy and feudalism, as well freedom of the press. Ironically, these are all values which Adam Weishaupt himself would fight for. Later on, in 1872, the Bohemian Club was founded in San Francisco as a fraternity for the arts. As the organization grew, however, it began to bear a strange resemblance to the Illuminati, and in the modern conspiracy subculture, it's the next best thing. The group started by attracting popular artists, but grew to lure in prominent business titans and political giants as well. The connections seem to run deeper than that. The symbol of the Bohemian Club is the owl. This same symbol was known to be the official sign of the Illuminati. It was attributed to the ancient goddess Minerva, who is said to bring sacred knowledge. Many modern conspiracy theorists have falsely attributed this symbol to the ancient Canaanite god Malak, due to a symbolic sacrifice ritual the club performs every year at their private grove. Malak was often the recipient of child sacrifice offerings in biblical literature, but bore the likeness of a bull, not an owl. Even in modern times, the most powerful men in the world continue to attend this cremation of care ritual. If there were a modern-day Illuminati, this is a dead ringer. Though many conflate everything of an occult nature to be associated with the Illuminati, its influence and ideals cast their shadow in many places throughout history, like some strange specter of ancient wisdom. Of all the historical figures who claimed association with the Illuminati, none were more controversial than early 20th century occultist Aleister Crowley. Dubbed the wickedest man in the world, Crowley, like Adam Weishaupt, was vastly misunderstood by his contemporaries. a similarity which may have caused Crowley's decision to canonize Weishaupt as one of the saints in his famous ritual called the Gnostic Mass. Crowley, who grew up in a parallel Victorian social oppression, followed in the footsteps of the Illuminati founder, leaving Freemasonry and eventually joining offshoot called the Ordo Templi Orientis. Crowley himself rose to prominence in the order and eventually reshaped the initiatory system in a model eerily similar to the Illuminati around the year 1912. He even called the introductory degree of his system Minerval, and some of the higher degrees are called Perfect Pontiff of the Illuminati and Epopt of the Illuminati. Could there really be a true Illuminati lineage to this order, which existed over a century later? It is rumored that Crowley used a counter-espionage system similar to Weishaupt, with an outer order network of initiates and an inner network of spies who held the real secrets of the order and protected its true motives. One thing is for sure: Crowley understood the tactics and legacy of the Illuminati better than most. Crowley is often accused of being a Satanist due to his libertine values and some of his tongue-in-cheek writings. He's almost been demonized as much as Weishaupt himself in conspiracy circles. If there was really a satanic plan for New World Order, these men would be considered the main culprits. What is the strange and powerful link between these two minds? Is it supernatural or simply inevitable? Part 3. Legacy. The mythology of both of these men and their writings has played a major role in shaping world pop culture in the 21st century. Everyone from the Beatles to Led Zeppelin has paid tribute to Crowley. It's no wonder there are so many conspiracy theories. But why are celebrities and powerful people so attracted to these ideas? Are they just libertine enthusiasts of their own time? Or were the ceremonial magic rituals Crowley practiced a gateway to something much more sinister? Perhaps the key to power and influence itself? To understand the rise of such speculation, we have to revisit the origin of these myths. Believe it or not, the iconic fable of selling one's soul for knowledge and power was invented by the Illuminati itself. Well, at least one prominent member of the order. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was a prominent German writer and statesman of his time. One of his most famous works, Faust, popularized the narrative of a character bored with life who sells his soul to a likeness of the devil called Mephistopheles in exchange for power and sacred knowledge. Did the Illuminati really know how to perform a Faustian bargain? Or is this what they want you to believe? Are modern-day celebrities really selling their souls for fame? Many conspiracy theorists point to the strange rise of the prevalence of occult symbolism in the film and music industries. World leaders flashing hand signs, occult themes and witchcraft regaining popularity among today's youth. Around the mid-1940s, the occult fascination died down as modern science really began to dominate the interests of society. There was a moderate resurgence during the hippie movement of the 60s, where neo-paganism, Eastern mysticism, and New Age philosophy were extremely hot topics. But the Illuminati only shows up in times of collective uncertainty. This free-loving period came to a close in a strange, dark fashion with the highly publicized Manson murders. The 70s began a time of paranoia and uncertainty, especially in America. With the Watergate scandal in '72 and sinister pre-Cold War sentiments waiting in the wings, the stage was set for the order to return, but this time in unlikely fashion. The Illuminatus trilogy was an extremely popular series of novels published by authors Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson in 1975. This fictitious retrospective of the Illuminati's activities and legacy throughout history gave profound perspective to readers about the totality of the subject. It was also a hilarious postmodernist satire which illustrated the absurdity of the nature of conspiracies and human behavior throughout history. The Illuminati conspiracy is so widespread now that it has almost worn out its welcome, becoming something of a pop culture joke to the masses, showing up in comedic memes and celebrity skits on late-night television. Is that all it really is today? Or is that a part of the conspiracy design? Many believe the Illuminati can predict the future because it is charted out in their master plan for world domination. Some people believe that they even leave breadcrumbs as to what these events will be in popular media. Could the creators of movies, television shows, music, and other forms of art and media know the truth? Or are they merely pawns being controlled by some other means to disseminate this copacetic information to the world? Some of the most popular media platforms people believe the Illuminati sends messages through include the Super Bowl halftime show, the Olympics opening ceremony, during the presidential State of the Union address, in pop and hip-hop music videos, and in speeches given at the United Nations headquarters. Many groups have had the honor of being affiliated with the Illuminati. But do an operative inner order of controllers exist today? If there is, Cicada 3301 might be a good candidate. Cicada is a highly technologically advanced and elusive group of unknown entities said to hold anarchic Enlightenment ideals, similar to the Illuminati. They have a competitive recruitment process involving a series of puzzles and code-breaking games that took the world by storm back in 2012. The contest is designed to find humans of exceptionally high intelligence. Each puzzle left an answer, which pointed to the group's core philosophy. Not much is known about the group besides what they show the world. Is this the kind of sophisticated method the modern-day Illuminati would employ? There are very few other groups who fit the bill as well as Cicada, at least not that the public is aware of. Through the efforts to centralize world powers continue to grow stronger on many fronts, power alone was not the ultimate intent of the Illuminati's mission. Society has progressed socially as the order set out to do, but humanity still hasn't achieved freedom from religion or governance, largely due to the one thing Weishaupt overlooked: the state of the human psyche. Mankind is still in a state of codependence with these institutions, and that may be due to a much grander conspiracy man has yet to uncover. Some say this secret can be seen on the American $1 bill. The all-seeing eye in the triangle is the symbol most synonymous with the Illuminati today. The truth is, this symbol has nothing to do with the Bavarian Illuminati, who identified themselves only by the Owl of Minerva, though it is interesting that Adam Weishaupt took a special interest in the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Eye of Providence is a purely Masonic symbol. We may never know if the Illuminati truly conquered Masonry, but when you view the Washington Monument from above, it appears to be a dot in the middle of a circle. Coincidence? or cover-up. Several geometric symbols are encoded in the architecture of Washington, D.C. when viewed from above, but perhaps this one is the most telling. There is no denying the existence of the Illuminati and its many disciples throughout history, though we may never know the true scope of the impact it had on our world. The intrigue of its enterprise speaks to something in the core of human nature. Fear of the unknown, fascination with hidden conflict, mistrust of those with status. As of right now, it appears that the Illuminati is a ripple, which will reverberate far into the foreseeable future. Did they capture their goal of world domination, or simply our imagination? Decide for yourself. This is only the official story.
Last year, some observers thought this video showed Pope Francis performing an exorcism. It created a buzz on social media sites. The Vatican strongly denied that the Pope was performing an exorcism. It said the Pope was conveying blessings. The Pope was conveying blessings.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper, he said the aliens have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are.
Comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Chaim Eshed is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years. Not immigrants, but extraterrestrials.
Here's the big question. Yeah. Would you baptize an extraterrestrial?
Only if she asks.
Okay. Well, you're going to call me when this happens? Because I'd like to be there at the font.
Then the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above the livestock and all the wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman and her offspring and yours. He will crush your head."
Innanzitutto vorremmo chiedere come sta, abbiamo visto si è fatto male.
Ah, bene, no, al momento no, ma mi sono schierato lì per salutare i bambini e non ho visto il vetro e boom.
Allora la domanda è...
Papa Francisco, esta es Greta, la chica famosa. Vino especialmente para conocerte y hablar en el Senado italiano, que como sabrás es una estrella mundial, millones y millones de seguidores, invitando y movilizando contra el cambio climático.
Sí, felicito.
And would you like to say anything to Pope Francis?
Thank you for standing up for the climate. And it means a lot.
God bless you. Continue to walk, Continue,
Once the room was settled and the Jesuits took their place, the musicians played instrumental music to set the tone for the special morning prayer service. Hymns were sung and intentions in various languages were voiced for Pope Francis and the Church. At the conclusion of their morning praise, all the men recited the Our Father and sang together Ad Maiorem Dei Gloria. A warm welcome was invoked by Father General Sosa, and the much-beloved pontiff, speaking in Spanish, gave his address to the faithful Jesuits. At the conclusion of his speech, the Holy Father joined Father General and the Jesuit delegates for a large group photo, a photo that will historically capture this special day when the first Jesuit Pope comes to a Jesuit general congregation.
Pope Francis welcomed an interreligious group from Argentina made up of 15 Jews, 15 Muslims, and 15 Christians. They were on their way back from a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. The Pope greeted each person, some of whom he already knew from his time as Archbishop of Buenos Aires. With such a familiar environment, the Pope improvised a speech focused on brotherhood. He cited Argentina as a good example since immigration forced groups to coexist.
La mayoría sabemos convivir, nos resulta más fácil y es un mensaje, un mensaje de que tenemos el mismo Padre en el cielo, el mismo Padre acá también, Abraham.
For the Pope, the pilgrimage his fellow Argentinians underwent is a good example of how to reach out to others and build bridges.
Lo que han hecho ustedes de recorrer estos pueblos, de recorrer sinagogas, mezquitas, templos cristianos, es un gesto de fraternidad y es una semilla hacia esa cultura del encuentro que todos tenemos que tratar de llevar adelante.
The Pope then interrupted his catechesis series on the Our Father prayer to recall why he considers his recent trip to Morocco to be important.
Ma qualcuno può domandarsi, ma perché il Papa va dai musulmani e non solamente dai cattolici? Ma quello che Dio vuole è la fratellanza fra noi. E in modo speciale per questo viaggio con i nostri fratelli, figli di Abramo, come noi, i musulmani.
He recalled that Catholics are not the only believers in the world. He also said that the variety of faiths should not divide.
Ma perché Dio permette che ci siano tante religioni? Ma Dio ha voluto permettere questo. I teologi della scolastica dicevano la voluntas permissiva di Dio. Ha voluto permettere questa realtà. Ci sono tante religioni che alcuni nascono dalla cultura, ma sempre guardano il cielo, guardano Dio. Non dobbiamo spaventarci della differenza. Dio ha permesso questo, ma sì dobbiamo spaventarci se noi non facciamo lavori di fratellanza, di andare insieme sulla vita. Nel Natale celebriamo la luce del Cristo che viene al mondo, che alle violenze e alle ingiustizie per i fratelli e sorelle. Oggi, in questo tempo di oscurità e incertezze per la pandemia, appaiono diverse luci di speranza, come le scoperte dei vaccini. Ma perché queste luci possano illuminare e portare speranza al mondo intero, devono stare a disposizione di tutti. Non possiamo lasciare che i nazionalismi chiusi ci impediscano di vivere come la vera famiglia umana che siamo, di promuovere la cooperazione e non la concorrenza e di cercare una soluzione per tutti, vaccini per tutti, specialmente per i più vulnerabili e bisognosi di tutte le regioni del pianeta. Al primo posto, i più vulnerabili e bisognosi.
Another area of discussion was religion. This is an avowed atheist speaking. And he said, religion is not necessarily bad. A lot of people seem to need religion with its mysteries and rituals, so they will have religion. But the major religions of today have to be changed because they are not compatible with the changes to come. The old religions will have to go, especially Christianity. And a new religion can be accepted for use all over the world. It will incorporate something from all of the old ones to make it more easy for people to accept it and feel at home in it. Most people won't be too concerned with religion. They will realize that they don't need it. In order to do this, the Bible will be changed. It will be rewritten to fit the new religion. Gradually, key words will be replaced with new words having various shades of meaning. Then the meaning attached to the new word can be close to the old word, and as time goes on, other shades of meaning of that word can be emphasized, and then gradually that word replaced with another word. I don't know if I'm making that clear, but the idea is that everything in Scripture need not be rewritten, just key words replaced by other words, and the variability in meaning attached to any word can be used as a tool to change the entire meaning of Scripture and therefore make it acceptable to this new religion. Most people won't know the difference, and this is another one of the times where he said the few who do notice the difference won't be enough to matter. Then followed one of the most surprising statements of the whole presentation. He said, some of you probably think the churches won't stand for this. And he went on to say, the churches will help us. There was no elaboration on this. It was unclear just what he had in mind when he said the churches will help us.
But you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat of it, you will surely die.
Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for being with us today.
I'm flattered to be invited, Father.
Appreciate
Thank you.
At least two of your predecessors as Vice President, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, it's well known among historians, they were not big fans of the Jesuits. Now, a mere 50 years ago, we had a debate in this country about whether a Catholic could actually be elected president, should be elected president. We established diplomatic relations between the U.S. and the Vatican only in the 1980s. And now this Jesuit Pope is coming to address a joint session of Congress. What does that say about our country?
Look, Father, I think it's sort of the history of the journey of this country. If you think about it, it's always been in the direction of inclusiveness. It's always been in the direction of acceptance. It's always been in the direction of expanding rights and recognizing differences. And I think whether it's the civil rights movement, whether it's the attitude toward the Catholic Church, whether it's the attitude toward minorities, it's a constant progression. I think what makes America the unique country in the world. It's about policy. It's about the whole idea of anything's possible, and it's about progression. And I know that sounds maybe that sounds too nativist, that I'm so proud, but it really is who we are. You know, look, in not too distant future, Father, we're going to be Caucasians of European descent are going to be an absolute minority in the United States of America. And it's a reflection of of who we are, and so it's not at all surprising.
And that will change the face not only of the country, but of the church in this country.
Well, it will change the face of the church. And by the way, you and I both know, I shouldn't be interviewing you, but you know, there are some real differences within the church in terms of the tone and direction and just how far we should reach out. The thing I love about this Pope, I got to meet him when I went to his, quote, inauguration. I always thought it was an installation, but the inauguration. And I had the great pleasure of representing the United States of America. My sister was with me, and I sat in the altar. And afterwards, as you know, Father, you line up in alphabetical order in the Basilica, and the Holy Father stands at the foot of the altar, and he greets every head of state or acting for the head of state. United States were at the very end, and so I walked up, and there was a wonderful Irish Monsignor who had sat in with me in a long interview or discussion I had with Pope Benedict just several months earlier. And he said, "Oh, Mr. Vice President," he said, you know, Holy Father. And the Pope reached out like this and he grabbed my hand. He said, "I know, Mr. Vice President, you're always welcome here." That is the message he's sending to the world.
And that is the tone he's striking everywhere, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's why he's the single most popular figure in the world today. And not just in Catholic nations, across the board. And it's because of he's the embodiment of Catholic social doctrine that I was raised with. Right. The idea that everyone's entitled to dignity, that the poor should be given special preference, that you have an obligation to reach out and be inclusive. Look at the encyclical on climate change. It's all about, you know, we have responsibilities. We have to husband this planet. I mean, and I'm excited, quite frankly, as a practicing Catholic. I am really excited by the whole world is getting to see what are the basic essential elements of what constitutes Catholicism. Right. We can argue about dogma, we can argue about some of the De Fide doctrine that's been declared, but this is below it and above it. This is something much larger.
And he's going to address this joint session of Congress, the first time a pope has ever done so.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to watch.
I'll be sitting right behind him.
You're going to be sitting right behind him. You and Speaker Boehner,
yes,
both faithful Catholics,
yes,
different political perspectives,
yes,
obviously. Have you and Speaker Boehner talked about the optics of this? Like, are you going to stand, are you going to sit, are you going to clap?
Not in terms of the Holy Father. We always joke on, we've now done 7 State of the Union addresses, and we joke with one another. And, you know, John will say, "Don't stand on everything, will you please?" And I say, "I got to stand on the parts I had something to do with in terms of writing them. I'm not writing them, you know, or arguing for them." But John's a good guy. You know, I think that we'll both be sitting there with a great deal of pride.
Yeah. And he will have something, won't he, in that joint session to say that will challenge and affirm everyone in that room, won't he? Different things for different people.
I think what people confuse, Father, I've read a lot of what you've written. You don't. The idea that fundamental religious convictions and all the confessional faiths, not just Catholicism, are incapable of being separated from politics with a small p, not a capital, not Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, and it goes back to what I said about Catholic social doctrine. I mean, we say everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity. My guess is, I don't know what the Pope will say, to state the obvious, but I would be surprised if he didn't enunciate the principles that underline all the major confessional faiths, and particularly ours, and imply that there is a collective obligation to try to give meaning and life to those principles we all say we agree to.
And you mentioned the encyclical Laudato Si, which had an enormous impact. Some folks in this country, some of the candidates for president, have said that the Pope should stay out of politics. He should really not be really involved in politics.
But they're wrong about that.
Yeah.
He didn't get into politics. He made it clear. It is not the papacy's role to be the scientist in chief and or the political arbiter. But what he talked about are basic fundamental assertions. Look, the way I read it, is it was an invitation, almost a demand, that a dialogue began internationally to deal with what is the single most consequential problem and issue facing humanity right now. And so the fact that he talked about, even our Department of Defense has written long papers several years ago talking about what a danger to national security failure to deal with this is. Sea levels rise another foot. You've got tens of millions of people being displaced. You think there's a migration problem in Syria. Watch what happens when hundreds of millions of people in the South Asia are displaced, trying to find new territory to live. Look what's happened with Darfur. Darfur is all about climate change. It's about arable land being evaporating, figuratively and literally, and warring over land. So I think it's a total misrepresentation of the Pope's encyclical to say it's a political document. It's a human document.
And you read this encyclical both as a public servant and as a Catholic.
Yes.
And I wonder, over the course of your public life, how you have navigated those different parts of yourself, the space between them.
Well, before we sat down, we were talking about a mutual friend, Father O'Donovan, who I have great admiration for. And when he was president of Georgetown, he asked me, my son was a member of the JVC, the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and he asked me to address a retreat at Gadsden Hall, which is a big hall at Georgetown. And I said I'd be happy to. And then he gave me the topic. He said, I'd like me to talk about how my faith has informed my public policy. And I never had talked about it in those terms before. But I worked really hard on it. And you know what I found out is sort of a self-examination. Until you used to write speeches, until you actually put the words to paper, it forces you to really focus. I was raised, the great news for me, where I've never had any conflict, is the way I was raised and the social doctrine and religious theology I was taught were totally consistent. And it was summed up best as I thought about it, all the things that animated my passions, whether it was the civil rights movement or what's going on in Bosnia, were all about what my father would say. My father would say, my father wasn't an overly religious man. My mother was very religious. But my father would say, the cardinal sin of all sins, Joey, is the abuse of power. Whether it's a man raising his hand to a woman, whether it's economic power being invoked and asserted over someone else, whether it is the government abusing its power. And that's how I look at what what this is all about, why my faith is so consistent with the public policy. Look, I'm a practicing Catholic. I really do believe that, I believe faith is a gift. It's not something you can, you can't learn to acquire it. It's a gift. And our church, I need not tell you, Father, it's you look at, God in terms of, the first obligation we'll have is love your God. The second one is love your neighbor as yourself. And then the way I kind of always thought about it, the way I was raised is, although I don't talk about Jesus Christ, but Jesus Christ was sort of the human embodiment of what God wanted us to do. And everything Jesus did was sort of consistent with what generically we were supposed to do. Treat people with dignity. Mary Magdalene, leper. I mean, everyone's entitled to dignity. Everybody. There's a basic tenet in my household. But when you look at it, it gets down to whether the Pope's encyclical, or whether it's talking about the poor, or whether it's talking about our obligations to others. It's all about fighting this notion of abusing power, no matter what form it is in, including the power of the church or institutions and I think that's why, I am so excited about this Pope. And it's not that I didn't have great respect and reverence for the last two popes. I got to meet them. I had 4 private meetings with Pope John Paul. But the thing that I think is so electric about the Holy Father is he's taking it all back to what my dad would say: we have an obligation to fight against the abuse of power. I find that totally, thoroughly consistent with everything a Democrat or a Republican. It's not. Can try to implement in terms of policy. Now, we'll disagree on a policy basis how best to deal with that abuse, where we think it exists or if it exists, but I don't think there's any fundamental disagreement that, we hold these truths self-evident, that all men are created equal. You could say it another way. The Pope says it. Every human being is entitled to be treated with dignity. So I find it totally consistent. And by the way, it's not just Catholicism. It's almost all confessional faiths have the same basic principles.
And yet there have been times when talking about specific public policies where you've had to take positions that were at odds with the bishops of this country on contentious questions like abortion. Has that been hard for you?
It has been. It has been hard in one sense because I'm prepared to accept de fide doctrine on a whole range of issues as a Catholic. Even though, as you know, Aquinas argued about, in Summa Theologica, about human life and being when it occurs, I'm prepared to accept as a matter of faith, my wife and I, my family, the issue of abortion. But what I'm not prepared to do is impose a rigid view, precise view, rigid sounds pejorative, a precise view that is born out of my faith on other people who are equally God-fearing, equally as committed to life, equally as committed to the sanctity of life, and I'm prepared to accept that the moment of conception is human life and being. But I'm not prepared to say that to other God-fearing, non-God-fearing people that have a different view. And even, I don't want to start a theological discussion, I'll get in trouble, it's above my pay grade, although it's my avocation. But, there's even been disagreement in our church. Not that abortion is always wrong, but there's debate. And so for me, at a point where the church makes a judgment, as we Catholics call de fide doctrine, they said, this is what our doctrine is. All the principles of my faith, I make no excuse for attempting to live up to. I don't all the time. But I'm not prepared to impose doctrine that I'm prepared to accept on the rest of them. And I actually had that discussion with Pope Benedict. It was I had a wonderful meeting with him several months before he stepped down. It was like going back to theology class. Right. And by the way, and he wasn't judgmental. He was open. I came away enlivened from the discussion.
Is there a place in the Democratic Party for people who are pro-life?
Absolutely. Absolutely, positively. And that's been my position as long as I've been engaged.
I wonder if we could talk for a moment about how you've had to live a lot of your faith in public view. And you've spoken about the role that loss and tragedy played in your life. And I wonder if that has been difficult too. I mean, there's a certain loneliness in every morning. And you talked about how you feel comforted by your faith, by your family, by your friends. But it must be a very difficult thing to do that publicly.
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword, Father. If you forgive me, I know you lost a brother.
I did.
And I know, I can't imagine your father, having been a first responder, responded in an accident and find out it's his own son that he's lost. But look, I have overwhelming advantages. So many people have gone through what your father went through. So many people have gone through so much more than I have without the support structure I have. And ironically, Father, the situation relating to the public side of this is, you know, so many hundreds of thousands of people affirming the inspiration that my son provided is uplifting. And we've all decided, Father, that we don't want to talk so much anymore about publicly or even privately about the loss. We want to talk about the inspiration. I mean, his brother, Hunter, is dropped everything and is working on taking care of everything from financial arrangements to literally spending an inordinate amount. I have three beautiful granddaughters, his daughters. But with their overwhelming support, he's spending an inordinate amount of time with Bo's two children. My daughter is regularly, she lives in Philadelphia, but spending inordinate amounts of time. This family, Jill, Hunter, Ashley, my children, I mean, we all decided that we should focus on the inspiration he provided. Vicki Kennedy's a good friend. And Vicki wrote me one of the most beautiful, heartfelt letters when Bo passed away. She knew Bo well. And she enclosed a copy of a letter that Ambassador Kennedy, Teddy's dad, had written to a friend. I think the year was 54, 53, 55, in that range, the early to mid 50s. A very good friend of his had lost his son tragically. And Ambassador Kennedy was sending a condolence letter to his very good friend about the loss of his son. And Vicki said when Teddy was down, he used to pull it out of the drawer and read the paragraph that I'm about to describe to you. Ambassador Kennedy said, and I'm making the name of his friend up, "John, I know the depth of the loss you are undergoing. I share it. But John, I've decided the only way," and his son Joe, remember, the eldest Kennedy was shot down in World War II and killed. He said, "I've decided the way to give life to Joe's life is to work on those things that Joe was dedicated to." And that's the decision we've all made, that regardless of what I do in public or private life, we are not going to walk away from the things that were that made Bo's life in his mind beyond his family worthwhile. So we've set up a foundation. He felt so strongly about the abuse of children and women. We set up a foundation in his name, raising millions of dollars to help children in distress. He cared deeply about the notion that there was a need for the equal application of the law across the board. So no matter what we do, all of us as a family are going to stay engaged and work on those things that Bo inspired people to care about. And so I'm and doing that in public, quite frankly, is the best way to avoid what we all feel self-conscious about. We feel self-conscious about the focus on us. I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me or the families. Again, so many people have gone through so much more with so much less support. Yet they get up every morning, Father, you saw it, and put one foot in front of the other, and they move on. My dad used to have an expression. I remember you got knocked down when it was a football field, or you got turned down for the date, or you didn't win the prize, or something bad happened to you. He'd say two things. He said, Joey, where's it written that life owes you a living? And the next one was, just get up, pal. Get up. And that's what Bo wants us to do. That's what Bo expects his father to do. So we're just getting up and moving on, and we're going to do good things in his name.
That's also a gift of our faith as Catholic Christians too, isn't it?
It is.
In the journey from Good Friday to Easter Sunday, you begin to experience the people that you've lost in your life, not just as an absence, but also as a presence, right?
Yeah. No, look, I've said this before. My wife, Jill, when she wants to leave a message that she wants to sink in, she literally Scotch tapes on my mirror when I'm shaving. And she taped about, I guess about almost a year ago on my mirror at home, a Kierkegaard quote where he said, faith sees best in the dark. That's the gift of faith. That's the gift God gives you, that you're able to see best. Faith works best when you know the least, when you are most frightened, concerned, not sure of where to go. And I find it extremely reassuring. And I hope I don't sound like I'm proselytizing. I mean, it's just, no, for real. I mean, again, every major confessional faith has the same basic tenet about, and in our church, the way I was raised, you think of it in terms of the Holy Ghost, now Holy Spirit now, but we used to say Holy Ghost, that's the source of the faith. And Christ was about, his dying on the cross was a heroic act, but what it really says, the way my mom would translate it is that she used to say, bravery resides in every man's heart, and some moment it will be called upon. And it was about, can you step up for things that matter a great, can you sacrifice for things that mean a great deal to you? I mean, the way I was raised, the way the priest that raised me, the nuns, my mother and my father, it was never in terms of heroic notions. It was just basic principles. Basic principles. It's on the way over, I was telling a story to Mike about my dad. And my dad would not have been viewed as practicing. He did not go to church every Sunday with us, to Mass with us. But my dad was retired, went back to work, and we were walking down the street in Philadelphia, and a beggar walked by. And I don't know why I said it. And he walked by me, and just being I never did this before. And I said, as a friend of mine would say, I'm working this side of the street. My father didn't have any money. My father stopped, opened up his wallet. He had a total of $40 in his wallet. He takes it out, gives the guy $40. And he looked at me like, probably with your dad the same way. My dad never raised a hand to me, but when I got that look of I'm disappointed in you, it was like hit me with a baseball bat. And he said, Joey, just looking at Joey. And I said, but Daddy, he's just going to get it to go buy alcohol or something. He said, Joey, do you think he'd be on the street if he had a choice? What do you think? What do you think? It wasn't about you give to the poor and you sell all your belongings and follow Jesus. It was just practical stuff. Just practical things. Somebody needs help. My entire time that I lived with my parents, we had, with the exception of 2 years, a relative living full-time with us in a 3-bedroom house. That was just, there wasn't any, it wasn't. And by the way, it was wonderful for kids. For the kids, it was one. Well, not my parents did it, but it was just, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that translating my faith was never discussed or viewed in dogmatic or heroic terms. It was just part of the experience, and that's where I get back up and where I began. Catholic social doctrine. We can put it in, the bishops say it very well in 7 or 10 points they lay out, or I forget exactly how many, but it just gets down to basic things. Dignity, the poor, inclusiveness, reaching out. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's hard, it's not that complicated.
Final question. Has anything changed in your thinking since your last public statements about whether you would seek the Democratic nomination?
No, Father. And, I know from experience, like from your experience, and millions of Americans know, it comes or it doesn't. I mean, I've just got to be certain that if I do this, I'm able to look you in the eye and everyone else and say, I've given all my passion, all my energy, and I will not be distracted. And secondly, equally as important, the other piece is this moment, is this the best thing for the family as a unit? And by the way, I never talked about family before, but everybody's kind of found out about how I am about family. But every person decides to consider running for president, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter, on both sides of the aisle. Everybody thinks it's all about, well, what do the numbers say, That's a calculation of whether you think it's possible. But that's not I've known almost every person who's run for president since I've been 29 years old, personally. And it all gets down to personal considerations, because you have no right to, as an individual, to decide to run. Your whole family's implicated. Your whole family is engaged. And so for us, it's a family decision, and I just have to be comfortable that this will be good for the family. In the past, all our political efforts have actually strengthened the family. It's been like, there was a joke that a local Delaware magazine called Delaware Today years ago, when Bo got elected, said, family business. Well, it's sort of been, my daughter's a social worker, my wife's a teacher, my son Hunter's a good lawyer, but he also is the chair of the World Food Program USA. He's still engaged in, it's all been sort of part of my sister, my brothers, and we're just not, it's not quite there yet, and it may not get there in time to make it feasible to be able to run and succeed, because there are certain windows that will close. But if that's it, that's it. But it's not like I can rush it. It's not like it either happens or it doesn't happen. I know that's not satisfying to anybody, but people who've been there, I know they understand.
Well, Mr. Vice President, thank you. I hope you know that our prayers are with you and your family.
I appreciate it very much.
Best of luck in welcoming the Holy Father to this country.
I'm excited to see him.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Father.
Hitler siegt! Hamburg liegt Deutschland in uns und wir Deutschland! Das Volk liegt!
His speeches were filled with hope. He says, I'm going to restore the glory.
In his speeches, he challenged people to love their neighbors, to care for the poor and sick, and to take a stand against violence.
He also said, I believe today that I'm acting in the sense of the Almighty Creator.
In public, Adolf Hitler often referred to himself as a follower of Christ. Even today, many people believe that the Holocaust was carried out in the name of Christianity. But what was the real relationship between God and Hitler?
Adolf Hitler was the nastiest, most hate-filled, wicked man almost in history. And to say that he was a Christian is to be either tremendously ignorant or to be disingenuous.
As a child, Adolf Hitler was baptized into the Catholic Church. He was an altar boy, and at one point, he even wanted to become a priest. But as history would later show, a church member and a Christian are two different things.
At the beginning of his political career, Adolf Hitler was a baby kisser, believe it or not. Even nowadays, if you want to get anywhere as a politician, you flavor your language and your speeches with maybe a Bible verse here and there, maybe have your picture taken with a robed minister outside his church on a Sunday, show up at a prayer breakfast and say something about God. And once you're in your place of political authority, then you can let your real agenda come out. And that's exactly what Hitler did.
From his earliest speeches, Hitler invoked God, a smart political move in the mostly Christian nation of Germany. One of his most public shows of solidarity with the church was the signing of the Nazi Vatican Concordat in 1933.
That pact was that the Catholic Church would support Adolf Hitler politically, and Hitler would make sure they had freedom of religion. Hitler in 1933 said wonderful things about Christianity. He even said he hated atheism and wanted to get rid of it in the country. So Hitler was truly a wolf in sheep's clothing, and he did pull the wool over the Catholic Church.
So if Hitler wasn't a Christian, why did he go to so much trouble to win the support of the church? As one writer put it, he knew Christians would interfere with his plans if they weren't hoodwinked first.
What you won't hear in history class is that Hitler wasn't just out to eliminate the Jews. He wanted to get rid of Christianity as well. Hitler Youth leader Baldur von Schirach admitted the destruction of Christianity was explicitly recognized as a purpose of the National Socialist movement. And here's Nazi leader Alfred Rosenberg, a member of Hitler's inner circle.
I am absolutely clear in my own mind, and I think I can speak for the Führer as well, that both the Catholic and Protestant churches must vanish from the life of our people.
In 1933, the German economy was in free fall, with unemployment over 30%. Germany was a nation in need of a savior, and Adolf Hitler decided that he would be the one to fill that role. As Hitler grew more powerful, his religious tolerance disappeared, and he tried to replace Christianity with a new Reich Church, a religion in which there was no God but Hitler.
I think after a while, Hitler begins to believe in Hitler.
Hitler set up a very horrible antichrist system disguised as a Christian church.
His fellow Nazis were only too happy to embrace the Führer as Germany's Messiah.
It is only on one or two exceptional points that Christ and Hitler stand comparison. For Hitler is far too big a man to be compared with one so petty. Our Führer is the intermediary between his people and the throne of God. Everything the Führer utters is religion in the highest sense.
And since every religion needs a house of worship, Hitler developed a 30-point plan for the new National Reich Church. It was even published in the New York Times in 1942. Among the rules, No pastors, chaplains, or priests were allowed to speak in church. Only National Reich orators. All Bibles and pictures of saints were removed from the church altars and replaced with copies of Mein Kampf. The cross was also removed and replaced with the swastika.
One of the most controversial Reich Church rules involved the Bible. Although Hitler quoted scripture in many of his early speeches, he later referred to it as a fairy tale invented by the Jews. And in 1942, the Bible became a banned book in Germany.
Adolf Hitler hated the Bible. He had his own Bible printed, 100,000 copies. There are some copies still around, but many of them were destroyed by people who realized what Hitler had done.
In Hitler's Bible, all Hebrew words, like hallelujah, were removed. He also replaced the 10 Commandments with 12 of his own. Among them, keep the blood pure and your honor holy. Maintain and multiply the heritage of your forefathers. Joyously serve the people with work and sacrifice. Honor your Führer and master. Hitler also wrote his own version of the Lord's Prayer, to be recited by the Hitler Youth.
Adolf Hitler, you are our great Führer. Thy name makes the enemy tremble. Thy Third Reich comes, thy will alone is law upon the earth. Let us hear daily thy voice and order us by thy leadership, for we will obey to the end and even with our lives. We praise thee, Hail Hitler, Führer, my Führer, given me by God. Protect and preserve my life for long. I thank you for my daily bread. Be with me for a long time. Do not leave me, Führer, my faith, my light. Hail, my Führer.
Hitler had his own church, his own Bible, and even his own hymn, sung every day in German schools.
Now that Hitler had set up his own Reich religion, it was time to get rid of the competition. And while his persecution of the Jews was well known, his final solution for Christians remained a secret for more than 4 decades.
In 2002, a Jewish law student uncovered a report from the Nuremberg trials in the 1940s. It was compiled by members of the OSS, an American spy agency in World War II. The report was called The Nazi Master Plan, the Persecution of the Christian Churches. And it laid out a step-by-step plan to de-Christianize Germany. Take over the churches from within, using party sympathizers. Discredit, jail, or kill Christian leaders. Re-indoctrinate the congregants. Give them a new faith in Germany's Third Reich.
So where were Germany's Christians in all of this? Most of them were too frightened to protest. But a small remnant of Christians did stand up against the Reich Church. A group of 3,000 Protestants, known as the Confessing Church, openly defied Hitler and paid the price.
Adolf Hitler said, I'll make those damned parsons feel the power of the state in a way they had never believed possible. If I ever have the slightest suspicion that they're getting dangerous, I will shoot the lot of them.
700 pastors from the Confessing Church were arrested. Many of them were murdered or sent to concentration camps.
There is such a thing as evil, and this man is evil. Hitler has no permanent loyalties. If you cross him, you'll die.
The most important aspect of Christianity that Hitler ignored was the belief that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. That's a role Hitler preferred to take for himself. And even when he did mention Jesus, it wasn't the Jesus of the Bible. For example, he refused to admit the fact that Jesus was Jewish.
So they didn't take any notice of John chapter 4, where the woman at the well said, "How is it you being a Jew?" And Jesus didn't say, "Hang on, I'm a Gentile." And then you find the genealogies in the book of Luke. They go right back through David, through to Abraham. So obviously they didn't believe the scriptures and they just made up their own Jesus.
The Jesus Hitler made up was an Aryan, whom he often referred to as the Nazarene, and the first great enemy of the Jews.
Adolf Hitler denied the deity of Christ and forced people to worship him as God. Then he killed or imprisoned hundreds of Christian pastors and hatched a detailed plan to destroy the church. If Adolf Hitler was a Christian, as many people suggest, then he wasn't a very good one.
If you are truly regenerated by the Holy Spirit, you're born again, you will have the evidence of fruit: love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, gentleness, faith, meekness, and temperance. So if you haven't got love, you're not a Christian.
Hi there, my name is Alan Lamont. I'm going to bring a message about the Knights Templars. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this is because I'm going to explain that the Knights Templars are at the heart of this conspiracy to rule the world, otherwise known today as the New World Order. Now, the Temple Church in London was consecrated on the 10th of February 1185 by Heraclius, who was the Patriarch of Jerusalem. And the church was actually the heart of the Templar site in London, but also for the entire Templar activity in the whole of Britain. And the Knights Templars really received great support and royal patronage from Henry II, who was present at the consecration of the Templar Church. Obviously King Henry III favoured them so much that he wanted to be buried there. Even though there was a consecration on Ascension Day 1240, the king, however, was buried in Westminster Abbey. The actual Templar Church had what's known as the Master of the Temple in England. This was a real forerunner for the Grand Master of Masonry. For if you look at the structure of Freemasonry, even today, you will see that the highest Masonic degree, the very highest Masonic degree, is the Knights Templar. Now, this is for a reason, because the Templars were not destroyed. They were not destroyed, and they actually became the Jesuit order. They became the Jesuit order, and I'll explain this. I mean, if you go to in the middle or in a temple, you will see the sign of the Jesuit seal sunburst around the Pegasus. The Pegasus is a symbol for the Jesuits. That's one of their symbols, secret symbols, and the Templars had power over the whole banking system in Europe. They were the first actual international bankers, and obviously that was the reason why there was persecution against the Templars, and they eventually defied royal orders, and they were persecuted. But they controlled the money, and they controlled the kings of Europe, and this system, as in the Templar system, is really the forerunner for the Jesuit order, for the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus. The London Temple was taken over by the monarchies of Britain and placed in the hands of the Knights Hospitaller, otherwise known as the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta really just kept it for the Templars, and a lot of the funding they actually received, in secret of course, to hold for the Templars. It is said that they were never restored. They were never abolished. They were never actually destroyed. The Jesuits today are the Knights Templars, and they run the City of London through what's known as the Inner and Middle Temple. Really, you know, these are two colleges close to the chapel, and they continue to control the City of London today. It's in fact the Templars that rule over the monarchy of Britain. They use the crown as a cover. They always do that. They always use the crown, obviously working through the Vatican knighthood, the Order of the Garter, and high-level Freemasonry. That's how they control that. But really, what are the Templars today? Okay, well, they, as I've said, they are the masters of the temple of the two ends of court. And obviously on the 13th of August 1608, King James I granted a royal charter giving them the use of the temple in perpetuity. Obviously that is the two court of inns. They could continue to, you know, maintain their power. And this is the Inns of Court, obviously, you know, connected to the Temple Church. And they're still governed by that charter. I want to just talk right now about what's called the Honourable Society of the Inner Temple. You can go on Google and find this, the Honourable Society of the Inner Temple, and you will see immediately come up the white horse, okay, and you will see the Jesuit sunburst, and you will also see it is exactly the same because it is the Jesuit seal. If you look at the Jesuit seal, you see the spikes and the sunburst there. This is the Jesuit seal, indicating that the Jesuits really are the revived Knights Templars in the sense that they are still Templars. I really believe that that's the true conspiracy, that the Templars were not destroyed, they infiltrated Masonry, okay? They were there at the very foundation of the Jesuit order and created the Illuminati, and that's why they always connect the Illuminati to Masonry. And these honourable societies of the Inner Temple, Middle Temple, Linden's Inn and Gray's Inn, this is the real covert control over London. This is actually in control of the Crown. Now, the Crown is not the Templar structure here. That's the monarchy. That's the Crown corporation in a sense, as in the government of Britain. Okay, two different things, but it's a Jesuit Templar Crown. This message is for people that are digging into this conspiracy and researching it. So that's what must be exposed. And if you actually look even at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I brought a video out just recently about that, and how you see in front of Jesus Christ and you see above him the sunburst. Whenever you see the sunburst, that's the Templar sign. Also the Templar cross, the red cross of the Templars. You will see that on the Corporation City of London symbol and logo for the City of London, indicating the Temple Church is in direct control of the City of London. You also see it on the symbol of the Order of the Garter. You see the Templar cross once again, but the real power here is the Jesuit sunburst. That's the seal for the Jesuit order. The Society of Jesus is actually the Honourable Society of the Templar in a temple. This is the true conspiracy. This is the conspiracy. This is it. And I'll just talk a little bit about the Templars again. I mean, obviously, their area across the earth is obviously, you know, as in their foundation was Palestine, Jerusalem, you know, otherwise known today as the Pope's Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. This is why you see the Jesuit sunburst right in front of Christ crucified at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, because they are Knights of the Virgin Mary, but they're also Knights of the Sun. Let me explain that. The Knights of Babylon. They're Babylonian. This is why Freemasonry is Babylonian and Egyptian and Roman, okay? So this is the conspiracy. The Templars really created the Jesuit order. They are Templars. This is really what happens when you get to the real heart of this conspiracy here. And that's why there's so much real disinformation on the Templars. people talking about the Holy Grail, and you had a lot of Dan Brown's, you know, diversion. Why is this? It's because the master of the temple is actually the Jesuit Superior General. Okay? That's right, the Grand Master is actually one and the same, the Black Pope. You know, Hans Kaltenbach and Adolfo Nicholas, they are the two superior Jesuit generals. This is what happened. In order to, you know, protect themselves, in order to protect themselves from their annihilation, they obviously work with the papal bloodlines of Italy, and they work with the royal households and the Holy Roman Empire. They went underground, and they just merely created the Society of Jesus, otherwise known as the Jesuits today, and they also began to control the papacy, and they created the Illuminati as another Templar Jesuit organization whereby they can infiltrate governments and overthrow monarchies and royal houses that try to suppress the Templars, that try to destroy the Templars. This is what this is really all about. It's, you know, the Templars overthrowing monarchies that tried to destroy and oppress them. This is why the Jesuits were created. Ultimately, the purpose of the Jesuits was to create the Illuminati, and now you see the whole picture. Now you see it. Now you see it. And, you know, people don't really bring this conspiracy. They don't really reveal it in its fullness. They'll explain a part of it, and they'll lead off into different diversions here and diversion there, and people are just getting diverted everywhere when it comes to this. So, you know, the Templars were not abolished, and they're not to be restored. They actually are, you know, ruling over all the royal bloodlines. They're ruling over world Freemasonry. And as I've said, it's obvious. It's obvious. Just look at the signs and symbols. Just look at them. Look at the symbol for the Crown Corporation of London. You'll see the Templar Red Cross. Look at the Order of the Garter, the Vatican knighthood presided over by the Queen, and you will see once again the Templar Cross. Look at the Knights of Malta, Templar Cross. Look at the Pope of Rome. What does he wear? Templar Cross. This is it. It's the Templars who infiltrated the Vatican through creating the Jesuit order. And once again, just look at the sunburst right there at the Court of Inns. Right? You see the Jesuit sunburst, you know, ruling over their, you know, honourable society of the inner and middle temples. And it's this Pegasus trust, you know, that rules over this whole legal system across the earth. And America is still ruled over by, you know, this military order, because the Templars are a military order. They were never actually a Catholic organization. If you look deep into the Templars, they were Babylonian. They were Babylonian knighthood, committed to the Babylonian mystery schools. This is why the Jesuits, is, you know, as soon as they were created their logo for what's called the, you know, Jesuit order, and you see the IHS standing for Isis and Horus and Seb in Egypt, otherwise going back to Nimrod and Semiramis, but that's a lot to cover and for another time. But if you actually look, they're identical. The Templars and the Jesuits are identical. The Jesuits were never Catholics, they were never Christian in any shape or form. They've always been committed to the Babylonian mysteries, always. That's why they made the Vatican what it is today. The Vatican was always Babylon the Great, but what they'd done was they, you know, worked through the Vatican to bring their crusades. Obviously, you know, when the popes of Rome tried to suppress the Templars would poison the popes of Rome. And when the monarchies tried to overthrow the Jesuits, the Jesuit Templars would just overthrow that monarchies through the front organization of the Illuminati, which is another Templar organization. I know it's a lot to take in, but after the last few years of research, I've found the truth. I've found it. That's it. That's the truth. You know? And so this is what's happening all across the earth. All of the wars are papal crusades waged by the Templars, you know? And their ultimate purpose, by creating the Jesuit order is ultimately to have, you know, Jerusalem, you know, and for the Black Pope to be the master of the third rebuilt Jewish temple, Solomon's rebuilt temple. And obviously this has been created today through the cover of Freemasonry, which governs the rabbis and governs Orthodox Judaism in Israel, preparing for the third Jewish temple. All along, people are looking at the Jesuits as being in control, and they are, but they are the Knights Templars, you know, and even the Knights Templar Jesuits rule over the Knights Hospitaller, or otherwise known as the Knights of Malta. So it's this Vatican knighthood that rules the earth and the monarchies today, and obviously govern in London through their temple of the inner courts, the Inns of Court, you know. And okay, I think that's a good place to stop now. My name's Alan Lamont, thanks for listening, and this is the true conspiracy. The Knights Templars became the Jesuits, and the Jesuits infiltrated and took over the Vatican, and from there they had complete power over the monarchies, and ultimately they used the Illuminati to bring the Napoleonic Revolution and the Russian Revolution, and obviously the Third Reich, and all of these wars even today are nothing but crusades of the Knights Templars who became the Jesuits. Okay, the Black Pope today, Adolfo Nicholas, is in fact master of the temple of the Knights Templar.
So you may have heard of the secret oath of the Jesuits. I looked into that, and what I found is this book called the Moneta Secreta. It's on openlibrary.org, and it was written by an ex-Jesuit, and it was published originally in the year 1723. And I didn't read the whole thing, but I just skipped through it, and so I just want to share a few things here. If you want to look more closely into it, I'll leave the link below. So it says the greatest possible care must be taken that these instructions do not fall into the hands of strangers. But if this should happen, let it be denied that these are the principles of the society, and let such denial be confirmed by those of our members whom we are sure know nothing of them. So it's saying there are some people within the order itself who don't know the ultimate agenda, which makes sense because we know a lot of organizations do that, a lot of secret societies do that. Chapter 1, it says, in order to render itself acceptable to the inhabitants of a place, the object of the society will be of great service. It is necessary to discharge the most humble duties in hospitals, to visit the poor and the afflicted and prisoners, that the principal inhabitants may be led to admire and love our people. So I'm just going to skim through what I've highlighted in here. And then it says, and cause them to be more liberal towards us. And then it says, all must learn the same outward manner. Be cautious in buying land. Let this be done in the names of some trusty and secret friends. Let the purchases which are adjacent to our colleges be assigned to colleges at a distance, by which means it will be impossible that princes or magistrates can ever have certain knowledge of the revenue of the society. So, I mean, they're trying to hide their revenue. And then it says, let the greatest amount be always extorted from widows. And let what is contained in the Roman treasury be kept secret. And this reminded me of Matthew 23, where it says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. And make long prayer for a pretense. I mean, that sounds to me like most of the church leaders that are in existence now. I mean, there's probably a few that are truly sincere, but most that I've seen, they all use the same vocal inflections while they're doing it. So I mean, you can tell that they are reciting these prayers just to conform to a community. And it actually says that right here in verse 5 of Matthew 23, but all their works they do is to be seen by men. In other words, they're just doing it to be accepted by other people. It says they love the uppermost rooms at feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But Jesus says, do not be called Rabbi, because all of you are brethren. And do not call any human father. Your Father is in heaven. Neither be called masters. He that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And then again he says, woe unto you, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses. And then Isaiah 10 also talks about this. It says, woe to them that decree unrighteous decrees and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, that widows may be their prey. And then it says, without me they shall bow under the prisoners, and they shall fall under their slain. Because, of course, all throughout the biblical text it says, okay, their judgment is coming. And so this 18th century book right here, supposedly translated from the Jesuit secrets themselves, from an ex-Jesuit, says that the greatest amount should always be extorted from widows, and let what is contained in the Roman treasury be kept secret. Okay, well, everybody knows that the Roman treasury is filthy rich now. That's not a secret anymore. And we know the Jesuits vow their allegiance to the Pope above all. So their success at gathering wealth, which is what that book was talking about, is pretty much evident at this point. It's not a secret anymore, although they originally said they were trying to keep it secret several hundred years ago. I mean, this is the crown of jewels. Apparently it has sapphires, rubies, emeralds, and other gems covering it. Their robes, we know, are made of fine silk and linen, or fine linen and silk. And I'm not an expert on this, but in just a short search, I found at least 3 different thrones that the popes sit on, which I don't know why anybody needs to sit on a throne. I'm 100% certain that Jesus would not be sitting on a throne while people are lying in the street homeless and starving to death. I mean, and a true representative of Jesus wouldn't do that either. I think we pretty much all can see that, I mean, at this point. And so the agenda that the Jesuits had in this book, clearly they have been successful at that, because their agenda was to acquire as much wealth as possible for the church, and to do it at any means necessary. And so it's clear that they were successful at that they acquired their wealth and their status. Very successful at that. So, and this pretty much explains that they used really evil means of doing that. And then it says here in chapter 2, every means must be employed at the beginning, that we may gain the ears and minds of princes and leading men, so that there may not be any who may dare to rise against us. And then it says their evil deeds, interpret them favorably under the pretext that is for the common good. Not only that, it says right here, if the prince begins to do anything that's not acceptable, he must be encouraged and urged on. And it says here, those who are of great authority in the state, they must be used in subduing and restraining the sort of people who are oppressed to our society. So they're going to use the government to get rid of their enemies, or which are probably the good people in the world, the people that don't want to be part of it. And then it says, let our people so direct princes and illustrious men that they may appear to aim only at the greater glory of God, for their aim must not immediately, but gradually be directed to political and secular dominion. So very slowly over time, they're saying they want to take over the governments, basically. And then here, this is another one that's especially bad. It says, greater efforts must be made against those who attempt to set up schools for the education of youth. Let it be shown to princes and magistrates that these people will cause disturbance unless they are prevented. It's talking about people that just want to help children. They're to be demonized. And then it says here, concerning winning over rich widows to the society, it says that down here, they're going to do all these things that they may be more easily withdrawn from the conversation of visits and suitors. So they want these widows to remain lonely so they can take all their wealth and property. And then it talks about in what manner widows are to be secured and their property disposed of. So this pretty much explains why Jesus kept talking about widows all the time, saying those who, devour widows' houses. This is it right here. And then it says here, let the mothers be instructed to annoy their children even from infancy with reproofs, castigations, etc. And especially when daughters are grown up, let them be refused ornaments and apparel suitable to them. Then it talks about how they increase their revenue by accentuating those who are poor within their community, but keeping secret those who are wealthy. And I mean, that just shows you that they don't even take care of their own. They simply use their destitute to advance their own agenda. And then it says it's necessary to dismiss as an enemy whoever has alienated those who are devoted to the church or persuaded any rich person or any person well disposed to leave. And also it's necessary to dismiss those who show greater affection for their relatives when disposing of their property. So if someone wants to leave their house to their child, for example, then this society will not accept them and dismiss them as an enemy for simply wanting to give their own property to their children. And personally, when I was looking at this, the first thing I thought of was that this is the binding of the tares right here, because obviously they're taking in people that are really evil and making enemies of those that are actually good people. And I mean, it just immediately reminded me of Matthew 13, which says, gather first the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them. In other words, bind them in bundles in order to burn them. I mean, that's symbolic, but we know these texts are telling us a nuclear event is coming. That's the burning. And a great multitude will be saved from that, a multitude that can't be counted. But before that, the tares, the bad seed, will be bound together in bundles. So, I mean, that's just what this seems like to me. Because if you continue reading this, you'll see they're dismissing good people and keeping the bad. So they dismiss those who care for their relatives right here. And then not only that, they actually harass those people. It says, okay, those people that care about their relatives, we're going to dismiss them. But that they may not afterwards complain of the cause of their dismissal, which was that they cared for their own family, then let them not be dismissed immediately. Instead, let them be harassed with chapters and public censures, and let them be restrained from recreation and conversation with strangers. Let them be deprived until they are driven to murmuring, and then let them be dismissed as persons pernicious to others by bad example. So, and then it goes on, it says they will also do this kind of thing to those who know their secrets. First, let them be persuaded to promise in writing that they will never write or speak anything injurious to the society, but at the same time let the superiors preserve in writing their evil inclinations, failings, and vices, which they themselves have at some time given according to the custom of the society. So it's talking about their confessions right there. Their Catholic confessions will be used against them. Then it says, this is what's done to those who simply know their secrets and are dismissed. I mean, they might not even tell anyone the secrets their whole life, but just because they know some of the secrets, this is what is done to them. It says they are discredited and harassed simply because somebody suspected that they might tell the secrets later, not because they actually did anything. And by the way, this is still happening in our own day and age. I've been talking about that. I just uploaded a video on it. It's called organized stalking and harassment. So this is still going on. So I'll try to remember to link that below, that video, if you're interested in that. And then it says right here outright what they're doing is suppression. So let me just read through here. It says it must be contrived that we may keep up an intimate correspondence with someone in the family in which the dismissed reside, and as soon as anything is discovered blamable or deserving of censure, let it be spread amongst the common people by means of persons of inferior degree who are attached to us. So we're going to have somebody from the church spy on them, hopefully somebody in their own family. But if not, they're probably going to use somebody else. And if something bad is discovered, we're gonna tell everybody in the community. And then it says, but if they commit nothing worthy of censure and conduct themselves in a praiseworthy manner, then let their virtues and actions, which are deserving of commendation, be depreciated by subtle insinuations and doubtful expressions until the esteem and confidence which is attached to them is diminished. So basically, if you can't find anything bad on them, just make it up. Just imply that they're doing bad things. And then it just outright admits that it's suppression, that's what they're doing. Okay. And then it talks about recruiting the men, let them associate with us, taking care that familiarity does not produce contempt. Well, I mean, why would it produce contempt unless they knew that what they were doing was bad? And then this is, I'm just going to go through the headings of these chapters right here. You can read it later if you want to. And then it says, showing publicly a contempt for riches. So even though they're trying to gather wealth, they want everybody else to think, oh, they're not interested in that. And it says it will be necessary to act more oh, here's a good one. After they manipulate the wealth out of those widows, it says it's necessary to be more resolute, to act more resolutely and sternly with widows and other persons who have given most of their property to the society. So basically manipulate them into giving all their wealth and then treat them badly after that. And they talk about their methods of advancing the society. And then this at the end talks about the vows that their members take. I thought it was sort of strange how it says peculiar care in the education of boys. I'm not sure what that means. Then they promise special obedience to the Pope, blindly following whatever they're told to do by their superior, who they believe holds the place of Christ. And in this one, this person is vowing to depose and kill all the kings and princes who don't believe in their ideology. So that's pretty much it. We all know Pope Francis is the first Jesuit Pope. So we're just, there it is. That's what the Jesuit agenda was hundreds of years ago. At least part of it. And we've had ex-Jesuits come out recently and say that they were instructed to infiltrate Christian churches. So that's part of their agenda as well.